All right, what's going on, everybody? Jared Barnes here, back with another episode of the Jared Barnes Show. And today I got a good episode. It's going to be probably a shorter one than the last couple, but really looking forward to this episode. Again, I'm going to run through it. If you're new here, really appreciate you listening. Really appreciate you watching. If you're checking it out on YouTube, if you're just listening, make sure to go over to the YouTube, subscribe. I'll do all that. I'm just going to plug my own stuff, but I really appreciate every single one of you. You guys mean a lot to me, and you've really helped me grow and really helped me, throughout this journey I've been on with this. Just very much enjoy it, and I appreciate every single one of you. Now, there's been a lot going on in the sports world. I have a couple different things I want to talk about because it's very hard to be passionate about everything, and I'm just not. And I'll be honest, that's not who I'm not. There's certain things to me that I'm just like, does that really matter? Some of it does, some of it I have a connection with, and that's what we'll talk about today. A couple of those things, though. One of them, a very big thing. Very big thing. The College Football Playoff Committee is considering expansion. They're considering a plan to expand to a 12-team, tournament-style proposal. Is to include the 6th highest-ranked conference champions and then the other 6th highest-ranked teams. Now, I'm a fan of this because it's going to finally give other teams a legit shot at possibly competing for a championship. Last year, we had BYU and Coastal Carolina, for example, go on very, very, very good runs. We all knew deep down neither one of those teams had a legit chance at making the college football playoffs. Last year, we had Texas A&M, who only lost to Alabama, that some people said, hey, maybe they deserved a chance over Notre Dame. But again, we only had 4 teams. 2 technically played from the ACC. We had Alabama, and then we had Ohio State. Alabama inevitably won. I think Alabama would have won regardless of who would have been in the playoffs. But here's the thing. Throughout the entire playoffs history, honestly, it's felt like there has only been a chance for maybe 7 to 8 teams per year that have a legitimate chance of making the playoffs every single season. Now, if you include this 12-team expansion plan, you're already giving 6 conference champions a berth, which just helps solidify the fact that winning your conference championship is highly important. Last year, we had the runner-up for the ACC, Notre Dame, who only lost 1 game, which was in the conference championship week. They made the playoffs. Did they deserve to make the playoffs? Maybe. Some people would say no. They had a great run. But some people would say they didn't deserve to be there. Last year, the Pac-12 championship did not make it. The Big Ten championship made it. The SEC champion made it. The ACC champion made it. The Big 12 champion did not make it. That was Oklahoma. The Pac-12 champion didn't make it. Like I said, the American Athletic Conference champion, they did not make it. None of the other, and they say winning your conference is important. But if you're not one of the Power 5 schools, specifically if you're not one of the Power 5 schools on the East Coast and located in the South, there is a good chance that winning your conference championship doesn't matter anyways. Because a couple years ago, Penn State won the Big Ten. They beat Ohio State. They went on a magnificent run. But they had 2 losses, and Ohio State made it in the playoffs over them. USC that same year happened to win the Pac-12. They were a 2-loss team. They went on a magnificent run. Penn State and USC ended up playing in the Rose Bowl, and it was one of the best bowl games of the entire bowl season. But they were 2-loss teams, so the committee did not deem them eligible to be in the playoffs. They were eliminated virtually even maybe before October began due to them having 2 losses, and that's just not how it should be. It provides more competition. That's the big thing for me. I'm excited. If this goes through, I'll be excited to see what happens because I feel like, what if there's one of those teams that can just go on a run and can pull off some magic stuff? I mean, that would be fun for me. That would be fun for, I think, college football because the monotony and the repetitiveness that is college football, because it always feels like every single year Alabama's going to make it, Ohio State's going to make it, and Clemson's going to make it, regardless of who's on their team, just strictly because we know that those are the legit programs in the country. And not that they're well deserving of those spots, but we would like to see something different. And I understand that because people got very sick and tired of seeing LeBron in the finals in the NBA. People got very sick and tired of seeing Steph Curry in the finals in the NBA. And it's honestly, some would say that hurt the NBA having too much repetitiveness. Some would also say it hurts college football, but college football is just a different world. And people are still going to watch it regardless. Like myself, I get tired of the monotony. I get tired of the same thing over and over again every single year. But I also then will be the first one to say, well, I mean, if we don't want the same thing over and over every year, let's get somebody else that can beat them. And normally, that doesn't happen. Now, what would a college football playoff expanded 12-team thing would have looked like in 2020? I kind of took it upon myself to figure that out, and I made a graphic for you. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, this will be very cool, very nice to see. I laid it out very nice. If you're listening, I will explain it. So I seeded the teams strictly based on, I gave the first 6 conference champions automatic bids. I gave them the first top 6 seeds because I felt that was the way to do it. So ranked at number 1, I have Alabama. Then I have Clemson at number 2. They won the ACC. I have Ohio State at number 3. All 3 teams that originally made the playoffs to begin with. Now, I base this off of the final college football playoff rankings that were given by the committee. Now, I didn't rank them in the necessary order because, like I did say, I gave the conference champions the first top 6 seeds. So at number 1, Alabama, 2, Clemson, 3, Ohio State, 4, Big 12 champion, Oklahoma, 5, American Athletic Conference champion, Cincinnati, because they were the next highest ranked conference champion. And then at 6, the next highest ranked conference champion was Coastal Carolina. So those were the top 6, and they were the 6 guaranteed conference champions because they were the 6 highest ranked conference champions. Then at 7, at the at-large bid, Notre Dame. At 8, and another at-large bid, Texas A&M. 9, Florida. 10, Georgia. 11, Iowa State. And 12, Indiana. Now, you can see these matchups. Alabama and Clemson, because they're the 1 and 2 seed, have a bye. Ohio State also has a bye. And Oklahoma also has a bye. So the top 4 seeds have a bye. I don't know if that is how the committee plans to do it, but that is just how I feel like you should do it. And so the way the committee said they want to do it, if they do the expansion this way, they want to make the home game, they want it to be a neutral site game between these 2 teams. So each game for the first 2 rounds will be played at the highest ranked seeded. So it's tough for me to explain by looking at the graphic, but based on the graphic, if you're watching on YouTube, it will be much easier. And I apologize if you're just listening. This is the tough part. This is why I say go to the YouTube, because I do want to make my show a little bit of a YouTube show, but also a podcast at the same time. So the first game, the Florida-Texas A&M matchup, that will be played at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Alabama. And then the next game, the Cincinnati game and Indiana game, would be played at Oklahoma Stadium. Iowa State and Coastal Carolina, which would have been an awesome matchup to see, would have been played at Ohio State Stadium. And then Notre Dame and Georgia would have then been played at Death Valley and Clemson. And then so on and so forth. The winner of those games will move on to play their respective, team that was up next. I love this idea of a 12-team playoff. I genuinely think it should have happened from the start. 4 teams was never enough in my mind. And I think that college football and the committee should do the right thing and finally expand the playoffs, because I feel like it's been needed for a few years, if not since the beginning. I mean, I was pretty cool with the way the playoffs are set up for about 2 to 3 years, and then after that, I was like, hey, this needs to be expanded. We're 7 years into this, and there has not been real legitimate talks of expansion until now. This wouldn't happen for another 2 years, but it's been a long time coming, and it needs to happen as soon as possible. I hope this goes through. They're going to be voting on it later in the week, I do believe. It'll be presented to the committee then. I'm excited to see how this goes and whether or not we see an expanded playoffs within the next couple of years of college football. I'm really looking forward to it. Now, moving on from that, we'll go on to the next topic that I have. It deals with a washed running back, a running back that many would say, it's his time's over. It's over for him. He hasn't been able to do anything since he sat out, and that's Le'Veon Bell. Over the weekend, he dissed on Andy Reid in the comment section of an IG post. Now, I don't know why he was in the comment section of this certain IG post. No free shout-outs, but shout-out Mountain Dew. They dropped Baja Blast. This is off topic. I don't care. It's my podcast. You got a problem with it. I mean, shout out to you for listening, but if you got a problem with it, I get it. I get off topic pretty easily. But they released Baja Blast back in stores, and I have not stopped drinking it since. But moving on, back on to topic with Le'Veon Bell. That's a Hall of Fame transitions there by me. Not really. This show stinks. Appreciate you listening, though. But Le'Veon Bell dissed on Andy Reid in the comment section of a different Instagram post. I don't know. Nobody knows why he was in that comment section, but, he said that I'll never play for Andy Reid again. I'd rather retire first. And listen, I get it. You can be angry all you want. You didn't get the touches that you were necessarily, wanting to get. I get it. That's a problem. I would be unhappy if I was him as well, because his average per touch was partly on number with the average per touch that he had back in his Pittsburgh days when he was, maybe a top 3 running back in the league every single year that he was playing. Well, not every single year, but for a couple of years there, he was like a top 3 running back, top maybe 2 running back in the league. And he was on average, like his average numbers, yards per touch when he was playing was about the same as those numbers, which is impressive, but he got very few touches. That's the problem. And I think part of his issue with Andy Reid, and I'm just speculating here because I don't know either one of them personally, clearly. I probably would be doing much better off with this if I did. But I'm just speculating that I would assume that Andy Reid told him that he was going to be they were going to kind of work him in and give him a significant role, and it was going to be carved out. And that never happened. Le'Veon Bell was just kind of an afterthought. I honestly forgot he was on the roster until it was, the meme was going around at look how far we've come since we left Pittsburgh with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. And I forgot that Le'Veon Bell was really even on the roster. I believe he was a healthy scratch even in the Super Bowl. That might be false. I just literally said that without really fact-checking myself before recording this episode. So I should have looked at that, but I'm not sure. But I would be upset too, because he still believes he's a very talented running back, and I think that he is. I think if given the right opportunity, given the right amount of touches, he could put up some numbers. He could do something for a team. At this point, though, with the drama that he brings, the issues that he's had with just about everywhere he's been, I feel like not everybody is going to be willing to give him that opportunity. I feel like he's going to have to take very little money to go somewhere if he does. And you look at everywhere he's been, he had problems with the Steelers front office. He said they weren't offering him enough money. Rumor had it they were offering him a contract worth $17 million a year. He has said multiple times on Twitter that was false. That was a narrative that the Steelers were putting out there. And I believe him. And I understand his problem with the Steelers front office. The man just wanted his money. But the Steelers said, I don't believe it's worth it for us because we know how running backs can go. Sometimes you give people their money, and then sometimes they just kind of end up doing nothing. So he sat out an entire season. then ends up signing with the New York Jets, and then he has problems with Adam Gase. He's there for not even 2 full seasons, and he gets cut from his contract. So then he's out of New York. Then he talks about his problems with Adam Gase and like how he had problems with that system. Then he immediately goes to KC. And, his first couple games, he got a decent amount of touches that looked like they were carving out a role, and then nothing. Everywhere he's gone, he's had problems with the leaders, the management. He's had problems with somebody of some kind. And I love Le'Veon Bell. I strictly love him because I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and I'm thankful for the joy he was able to bring me because it was fun to watch him on a football field when he was at his best, in his prime, per se. He hasn't looked like that same player ever since he's left Pittsburgh. Has he been in the perfect situations? Not necessarily, no. But he's never really looked like that same guy. And that's a shame because I loved him. But sometimes you just have to, you just have to wonder whether it's him that's the problem or it's just an inconvenience and it just happens to be everybody else, especially when the person has problems every single place they go. I lean more towards that maybe there's a chance he is the problem and he has failed to see it. I think he's happy with himself. He's gotten his money. And some guys, when you get your money, you do kind of get a little lazy. And I'm not saying that he got lazy. I'm not saying that at all. But it is interesting to see how his career has declined ever since he has gotten his payday. I love Le'Veon Bell, though, and I don't want to diss on him at all because he is a guy that I'm a big fan of. Tyrann Mathieu actually responded to Le'Veon Bell, and it was a funny response. He somehow related it back to himself and said, like, this is why y'all are like, I don't know. To be honest, it did just seem like Tyrann Mathieu was just trying to throw himself in. He was defending his coach because he loves his coach, but it seems like he was throwing himself in a situation to talk about how he's just a different type of player. Like, bro, I get it, but, like, man, your ego is so big sometimes. Like, I respect you, Matthew, but your ego is so big sometimes. That's hilarious. Moving on from Le'Veon Bell, though, there's been some other stuff going on in the sporting world, something that I think is very interesting, but I haven't heard a lot of other people talking about. The USFL, it's returning after nearly 25 years. It's a spring football league that, if you look at the numbers, it actually lasted longer than the XFL both times, combined with the AAF, the Alliance of American Football. That's 2 football leagues that ran that it ended up virtually running longer than, and the XFL ran 2 separate times within a 19 to 20 year gap, and then the AAF 1 year in between that in 2019. That's 3 seasons between them, and the USFL lasted 3 seasons themselves. It's set to kick off in 2022 next year, and it's already partnered with Fox. And I do plan on taking a deep dive into this in a completely separate video on my YouTube channel, something that won't be on the podcast because I'm going to start doing stuff like that, creating content like that. The USFL, they ultimately fell apart because they wanted to move into the fall and try to take over the NFL and possibly force a merger. But they were based in some actual football cities. They had quite a few teams with quite a few owners that had a lot of money. And I'll be interested to see on how they, build up a spring league, because all of them have just always seemed to fail. But this was one of the more successful ones we have ever seen. And I believe the XFL would still be kicking if coronavirus never came in and just drop-kicked it in between the legs and murdered it. But now, with this set to kick off in 2022, the XFL, there's a chance it could be delayed. If the XFL gets delayed and the USFL, it already seems like they've set themselves up for wild success. After I've done some digging, and like I said, I plan on doing a video. I'll be intrigued to see whether the XFL can survive its 3rd stint if the USFL does come around kicking, because I feel like the USFL is going to do very well, and that's just my initial thoughts on it. I'll be interested to see, but I think somebody at some point is going to come along and be successful in the spring and possibly force their way as the NFL G League per se. Like, I feel like that's going to happen at some point. It's just inevitable. But when is the question? I'll be interested to see. Moving on from that, though, there has been some very interesting stuff come out about the Major League Baseball. And I'm sure if you follow baseball, you're going to hate my take on this because I am not the biggest baseball guy. I love the game MLB The Show. I like watching a baseball game here and there. It's great background noise. But baseball only seems to come up in the news when there's a massive scandal, and that's a problem. They always tend to handle it wrong, and these always tend to be scandals that happen to be things that were just unwritten rules, and they wouldn't really be a big problem if the MLB just kind of acknowledged that they happened and tried to find a way to, do something about it before it became a big issue. And, it starts all the way back in the 20s when people would just be, tearing up balls and spitting on their hands, spitting in their glove and stuff like that, just to give them some extra grip on the ball, because everybody knows you get a little extra grip on that ball, you can get that thing to rotate better, which is going to help you with a curveball or any other, just strictly any pitch, that because the more rotations on the ball, the harder it's going to be, the faster it's going to go, and the better the pitch is going to be in general. So people have always been using something, whether that be a razor to nick up the ball a little bit to give them more grip, whether that be some foreign substance on their hand. And it's gone to the point now where players are using spider tack, which is like the most grippy substance pretty much in the entire world virtually. And, to explain what spider tack is, I saw this video, and I'm going to probably drop the video and credit the person that I found it from on YouTube, where this bodybuilder, this bodybuilder who lifts weights heavily used it, and he said, "This is spider tack. I'm going to open hand palm, grab this brick," and he put his hand down on it with spider tack on his hand and picked it up, and he was able to hold the brick in his hand. Pitchers are using this, and that was a lot of it, but pitchers are using a little bit of this on the ball to help give them, the rotations and stuff like that they're looking for. And it's gotten to the point where it has caused the batters to have a league-wide average of like .250 batting average, which is awful. Runs have been tough to come by this season, and this is partly to blame. Now, it sucks that every single time that Major League Baseball has a scandal that anytime they're really in the news big time and they're anybody's leading story, it's because it has to be some scandal of some cheating of some kind. But that's always how it's been. That's probably always how it's going to be. Hopefully, Major League Baseball can come up with ways to stay in the news and stay relevant for stuff other than that. But I don't know how they're going to handle this. Right now, pitchers are going to be getting like 10 games suspended if they find any sticky substance on them. And umps have the authority now to check any single player virtually on an entire team for it if they have any suspicion. And they can check it any time they want, which is only going to hurt the time of a baseball game, because they're already long enough already with very little action. If umps start getting out of hand with this, I mean, it's going to be almost impossible to watch a baseball game. But I'm excited to see how they handle this situation, because it's an interesting one, because stuff like this has been going on for so long, but now it's to the point where it is literally affecting everybody league-wide. Like, it was kind of already probably doing that before. Nobody probably talked about it. But now that, some people did start complaining and being very upset about it, like, it has become a very, very large story. And Rob Manfred just tends to handle things so poorly. But hopefully he handles this one correctly. But I have my doubts. Moving on from baseball, though, because I would guarantee that views are tanking if you're watching this or listening. If you made it this far into the conversation, the second I started talking about baseball, you probably did turn it off. And hey, I respect that completely. Moving on from that, though, there's a couple other small things I want to hit on before this episode ends. Change the ticker up here. Give you some NBA matchups for today. Kawhi Leonard, he's dominating right now as the Clippers even the series. It's 2-2. I'm excited to see how that series continues. They have a game actually today, because today is the 16th when I'll be releasing this episode. They have a game today versus the Utah Jazz, the pivotal game 5, as the series is tied 2-2. I'll be looking forward to that game at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on TNT, along with the game prior to that, this Philadelphia 76ers and the Atlanta Hawks. Joel Embiid, still fighting that injury, did not look very good 2 days ago in the second half. He did not hit a single field goal. I said last week in an episode that maybe he should rest and maybe the 76ers should just kind of let this season go, because it's clear that he's never going to be healthy enough for them to win a championship this season. So why are you going to force it and possibly let him get injured? And I'm nervous at this point that it could happen. And I'm still very nervous about that. But yeah, that's that. Another topic I want to hit on before this episode ends. Derek Carr makes it clear that he doesn't want to leave the Raiders. He actually said in a statement today, since the first time he's talked since season ended, that he said this statement word for word. He said, I would probably quit football if I had to play for somebody else. There has been a lot of players this offseason, they're a little disgruntled. Maybe they want, certain things to be happening. For example, Deshaun Watson made it clear or very early in the offseason that he wants out of Houston. Aaron Rodgers, that entire situation has been messy, and it continues to get messier. Derek Carr, who's never had the best roster around him, never seemed to be in a great position, has never really came out and complained about the Raiders, and that's because that's where he wants to be. He wants to be a Raider for life, he says. And he's always a part of trade talks. He's always a part of trade speculation. It feels like every offseason you can guarantee one or two things. You can guarantee this, that a big-name player is going to get traded for less than we ever expected him to. You can expect Derek Carr's name to come up in trade talk speculations. And you can expect somebody you never heard of climb up in the NFL draft, go in the first round, and then probably be a bust. Those are some things you can just kind of expect from an NFL offseason. You can expect fake news and drama all around. But those are just some things that you just know every offseason you're going to get. Derek Carr, 100%, is going to be in trade talks every single offseason. And it sucks that it has to be that way, because Derek Carr is a solid quarterback. And I think, honestly, at this point, as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I don't fully believe in Ben Roethlisberger. I'd kill to have Derek Carr as my quarterback, personally. As a Pittsburgh Steeler, I would kill to have Derek Carr as my quarterback, because I know he's going to give us consistency. Not that Ben isn't going to give us consistency, but Ben is getting older, and that gives me a franchise guy that I can have like a franchise around. And that's just Derek Carr for you. I like Derek Carr, and I hope he gets to be a Raider for life, because that's something that doesn't get to happen. It doesn't feel like a lot of organizations are as loyal as they used to, and that's a shame. Last topic of the day, though, and I'm sure everybody's probably seen the video at this point, and it's tough. Mac Jones versus Cam Newton. As of right now in minicamp, it has not looked good for Cam. He got injured early. He missed some time. Mac's starting to learn the offense. And then this video comes out where they're like throwing the ball, and Cam is driving the football so hard, and guys are not catching it. He's overthrowing guys. He's missing guys. And I mean, this is accuracy issues. And you're not even really under pressure. And Mac Jones, he's sitting in the pocket. He's sitting there nice and comfy, delivering balls, soft touch on the ball. It looks great. And that video just made Cam look very, very bad. And now I had no idea what was going on during this drill, but it did not help Cam's case in the eyes of the public that he deserves to be a starting quarterback. And as a Cam guy, I don't like that. I'm a Mac Jones guy. I love Mac Jones. Hyped him up before the draft. Told everybody that I'm a huge fan of the guy. I said, man, this guy is a top 10 pick. Not being a top 10 pick, but I said this is a top 10 talent. I love him. I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in this draft class. He should be like the second or third quarterback off the board. Then he goes to the Patriots. And I love Cam Newton. But strictly based off that video, if you showed me that video, I would say and I didn't know who either of them were, and you asked me who the starting quarterback was, I'd say, oh, that guy in the 50 jersey is the starting quarterback. But no, Cam Newton's the starting quarterback. He's a former NFL MVP, and he's playing like that. It's terrible to see. It's disappointing for me as a Cam fan, and that's just tough. I'm excited for this quarterback battle, though, because I feel like everybody in that quarterback room is pushing each other. Brian Hoyer is a guy that has always just bounced around the league, started in New England, probably going to end his career in New England at some point. He's going to try his hardest to make that roster. Jarrett Stidham, same thing. Jarrett Stidham's probably pushing to try to be a starting quarterback because this is his third year in the system. He wants his shot as well. They just drafted Mac Jones. He's going to clearly want to start. And Cam Newton clearly wants to start because he's trying to prove everybody that he is still a very, very good quarterback in this league. So that is the quarterback competition that I am excited to watch this offseason because there's some veteran presence in there. There's some young guys that we don't know what to make of yet in Jarrett Stidham and Mac Jones. And like I said, the massive veteran presence in Brian Hoyer and Cam Newton, a former MVP and a former journeyman quarterback who's bounced around, but he's seen a lot of things, seen a lot of systems, and is comfortable in the New England system. I'm excited to see how that quarterback battle goes. Another one that is intriguing, though, you look at the New York Jets quarterbacks, and nobody on that roster as a quarterback right now has ever attempted an NFL pass. I just scrolled and saw this on Instagram before I started recording. The only person on the Jets roster that has ever attempted a pass is Jamison Crowder. To me, that is wild. But, yeah, that's virtually everything I have for this entire episode. So, yeah, I appreciate you hanging out with me for about a half hour or so. And, stay tuned for a video later this week on the history of the USFL and my thoughts on why it may succeed. I'm excited for that one. Hope you're enjoying sports trivia. I have a couple of new ones coming out this week as well. I'm doing one of those every single day from here on out until further notice because I very much enjoy the series. It gives me interaction. I fully plan on coming up with an idea for a sports trivia show, recording a bunch of episodes and backlogging them, and then seeing how it goes. So I'll be excited to see how that goes. I'm excited for the rest of the week. I'm excited for the rest of the NBA matchups this week, for the way those series might play out. But yeah, hope y'all folks have a good week. I very much enjoyed it. Thanks for hanging out. Peace. And have a good one. Also, I would highly suggest checking out Loki, the series on Disney+. That first episode came out. I watched it. It was very, very good. Owen Wilson was in it a lot more than I thought he would be, and I hope that continues because I really like Owen Wilson. I really like the Loki character. I like that this is the route they decided to go with him. I think it's going to be intriguing. They're setting us up for a really good twist in that, and I very much enjoyed it. So yeah, check that out. But again, appreciate y'all for hanging out. Peace. I'll see you later.